What's going on YouTube? This is Tap Nuo, and I'm an audio engineer, DJ, producer, music nerd from Los Angeles. And I'm here today in my uncle's backyard because I just felt like switching it up, and it's such a nice summer out. Talking about audio engineering and working as a professional audio engineer and the things that they don't tell you. You know, and if you're new to my channel, welcome. Super glad to have you here. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you are a returning viewer, this might be a little different than stuff you're used to. It's usually, you know, DJ mixes or Pro Tools or Logic tutorials. But I feel this is very important and this is related to everything else I've been talking about. And anyone who's interested in audio engineering, I think you're going to be able to get something out of this. I've been working as a professional audio engineer for about 5 years now. That's how I pay all my bills, is just through working on audio, you know. And I've learned a lot, both obviously in college, but I think you learn a lot more in the real world and just through doing it and through client experiences and, you know, last minute kind of like work nightmares of situations, problems that you have to solve. And so like this past week, I was just kind of thinking like, wow, I've really been doing this professionally for a good amount of years now. And like, what have I learned, you know, and then kind of like going through it and thinking like, damn, what are the things I would tell someone who is thinking about becoming an audio engineer that knows nothing about it, or maybe you're just diving into it. And I kind of boiled it down to three things. Can you see that? The lighting's kind of weird in the backyard because the sun's going down. But anyways, it's three things that you want to take away from this. So number one is going to be people skills. You have to be able to work with people, especially if you're going to work in music. You know, there's a lot of people out there who work as recording engineers, as mixing engineers, even mastering engineers. Anything in music, if you're working on music, you need to be able to work with people. And the reason I say that is in post-production and film sound, the communication is a little more on like email and phone calls and Slack and stuff like that. But music is still like a very face-to-face environment. And, you know, I was working as a professional engineer at a studio a couple years ago during COVID. And even during the pandemic, we'd have a mask on, but we're still together in person. And, you know, people skills are just in some ways as important, if not more important, than actually knowing audio engineering. Because the client is paying for an experience. They're paying their money not only to have a song recorded and worked on, you know, but they are paying to go to the studio. They have to take time out of their life, you know, because they have other stuff going on. They're excited 99% of the time. They're really excited to be there, and most of the time they get there on time. I mean, sometimes people get there late, but even then you have to be able to adapt and, you know, work with people who are going to show up late to appointments and stuff like that. But like, I think the main takeaway from, if you're going to work with music, like, people skills in the sense of you have to be able to make the client feel comfortable in the recording booth. You don't want to be confusing them. You also have to know how to communicate on the fly and adapt. Adapting is huge in music, especially if you're recording singers and rappers and people who, you know, they might be able to create musically, but they don't know engineering. They don't know how to edit audio. They don't know how to mix a song. So they're counting on you. They're putting their trust in you to deliver, you know, and a lot of that is you want to make the client feel confident in your abilities. And some of that is going to just come from experience, you know, like setting up a microphone and stuff like that. You don't want to be looking all stressed out when you're doing that, because then that's going to make the client feel stressed out. Like, oh, this person doesn't know what they're doing. You know, you want to give them as much confidence as you can. And that's how you're going to get the best performance. You know, perfect example, like when I was working as a recording engineer with a lot of rappers, mostly rappers, but also singers. The studio that I worked at had a couple different engineers that specialized in different genres. And one of the engineers wasn't able to be in that day. So his clients ended up coming to me, and we just kind of hit it off. We clicked, and they really enjoyed my presence, and I really enjoyed their company, and we really enjoyed like just the ability to create together, and they would record something, and I could kind of pick up on where they wanted to punch in and stuff. And so you build a chemistry with clients, and those people ended up wanting to work with me as opposed to my coworker, just because we had a little bit better chemistry. And this opposite happened for me as well, like where I didn't necessarily click with a client, but then one of my coworker engineers was able to work with them and provide them the experience that they were looking for. So like you have to be able to read people, also like kind of like read the room, if that makes sense. Like there's appropriate times to take a break, and there's not appropriate times to take a break, stuff like that. You're also, if you're working in music as a recording engineer, one thing they don't tell you is like be ready for anything. You're going to get people who sometimes are drinking, sometimes doing more than drinking, and like when I was doing that in studios, it was like every day was like the lottery. You never know what you're gonna get, and that's what kept it really fun. That's what made it like I have so many fun stories from doing that. And it teaches you to be fast, like really fast, because you have to be able to just like that, kind of get the ball rolling, and okay, we are gonna record this. Oh no, we're gonna do some doubles. We're gonna do some ad libs. Like you have to just know kind of where the client wants to go, and that's why when you work with over sessions and you build a relationship with a client, like it becomes easier to read them over time. And again, this is all of this information. Like I'm just kind of going off the dome here, so I don't have a script or anything. So just kind of bear with me. But that takes me to my second point number 2. Night shift and swing shift and hours, late hours, stuff like that. I mean, obviously, I think anyone who's interested in becoming an audio engineer, there's some awareness of you are going to be working weird times. What they don't tell you is like how often you're going to be doing that. It's not like once in a while you're going to get off work at 4 or 5 in the morning. Like depending on what you're doing, most of the time you're going to be working late. And one thing I wish that people had told me about when I was trying to get into audio engineering is that the opportunities are at night. A lot of the experienced people who have been doing this for over 10 years, 20 years, people like my uncle, who he works at Lucasfilm as an audio editor and sound effects editor, all that kind of stuff. Those guys have more flexibility in their schedule. But if you're trying to get the ball rolling with your sound career, the opportunity is going to come past like 10 o'clock. You're going to be able to get a lot more if you are willing to work late, and get a lot more. I mean, get a lot more work. Both right now where I work as an audio editor, and pretty much all of my past sound jobs, I'm working till at least midnight. I've had jobs where I'm working till 9 in the morning and starting my shift at like 2 in the morning. It just depends. But basically, like, don't think this is a 9 to 5 kind of deal. I mean, you're really lucky to get a morning shift that ends at like when everyone else is getting off work. But there's benefits to that. One of the benefits is traffic. I mean, I live in Los Angeles, and that's a big city for sound engineers, and I barely ever have to sit in traffic. I usually right now start my shift around 2 o'clock, and there's not, because I'm coming over to Burbank, where there's a lot of studios over there, and traffic going to Burbank at 2 o'clock is nothing, but traffic going to Burbank at maybe 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, that's a different story. So, you're working crazy hours, but like there's additional benefits other than just traffic, such as you get off days. Like, for example, my uncle, he's not working right now for maybe like 2 months, but that's because he's on working like really long hours, really late, and then they give him a break because there's another film or whatever project they need to work on. And for myself, I'm off work today. I get 3 days off every single week. So I still work a full time, but I work 4 days at 10 hours. So I get off work pretty late, but then it's like I go in and I just knock them out, back to back to back to back. And I work right now Fridays through Mondays. So that's another kind of like, I don't know what the word is, but just like additional point about what I'm trying to make is um weekends. Basically, like nights and weekends are going to be where the opportunity is as an audio engineer. And of course, you can technically work any hours, and if you work remote, or if you work freelance, you're going to have a lot more flexibility. But if you are trying to work for a company as an employee, um, you're going to have a lot more options and opportunities and room for growth in the evening. And that's another thing is like at where I work right now, I work at Deluxe Media as an audio editor. And like I've had a lot of wiggle room to grow in the night shift, just because there's not that many people who want to work that late. And I mean, I'll keep it real with you. I'm pretty sick of working that late, and I'm trying to, as I get more experience, I'm trying to work out of that. But if you're trying to get into it, and I'm still, I still have a long way to go, and I could probably do the late thing for another year, maybe 2 years tops, but I'm trying to work out of that. But you can't get there unless you kind of do the grunt work of those first few years working really late. Um, and I think a lot of people that are involved in audio, at least myself, I mean, as a techno head too, staying up late is no big deal for me. Like ever since I was a little kid, I've always stayed up late. So I'm just kind of naturally a night owl. I usually don't start my day until about 11 a.m. 11 a.m. is early, usually like noon, honestly. So yeah, if you're not into like waking up early and doing that kind of stuff, audio engineering is perfect for you. If you like to stay up late, if you like to sleep in. Um, Now, number 3, night shift. Oh, okay. Yeah. Number 3, Pro Tools. That is the most crucial part of being anything in audio. The hard truth, the really tough thing to swallow is nobody cares how good you are in Ableton. Nobody cares how good you are in Logic. No one cares if you know Reason. No one cares about any of that stuff. If you want to work as an employee at a studio, at a film sound studio, at a recording studio, they don't care if you know those other programs. Obviously, that's a benefit, especially if you work in music. They want people who can navigate other programs such as FL Studio, stuff like that, because when you're producing and even when you're mixing, it helps to know those programs. But if you want to be an audio engineer, you have to know Pro Tools. You have to be fast on Pro Tools. And I don't mean like kind of fast. I mean like you gotta be, they tell you to do something, you gotta have it ready right now. Because think about it, like when you're recording, let's say you're recording a rapper and they're freestyling, they're just coming off the top of their head with some of the craziest stuff you've ever heard. If you don't know how to keep up with them, you're gonna miss the recording and piss them off, and then they're not going to want to work with you. They might not, if you work for a studio, they might not want to work with that studio again. Or like if especially people like to punch in, they'll record a line, listen back, record another line. Like you got to be able to keep up with that. And when it comes to editing, stuff like TV shows and stuff, I mean, sometimes I'll come in to my job right now and I usually have a checklist of stuff they need me to do. And sometimes I look at that checklist and I'm like, wow, that is a lot of stuff. But it doesn't freak me out because I know kind of like the shortcuts, of like how to work efficiently and how to work fast. And that's all done in Pro Tools, especially if you're working with picture. They don't care if you know Final Cut. They don't care if you know Premiere. They're going to do all of that in Pro Tools, and recording studios as well. I mean, there's engineers who, recording studios they'll have Logic on their system and whatnot, but the industry standard is going to be Pro Tools. You're going to need to know how to properly manage sessions, properly manage files. For example, where I work right now, we'll have like a show that we work on, and then it'll come back because they need changes, they need edits, there's notes and stuff like that. And I love when it's notes that are on something that I've already worked on because I've got my session organized. I have things color coded, labeled, all of that. I really do not like when it's certain coworkers of mine that I'm getting their work because they don't keep their stuff organized. They don't label anything. Their sessions are, it only makes sense to them. It doesn't make sense to someone else. I mean, obviously, like I can figure it out, but again, going back to efficiency, it's super inefficient because I shouldn't have to spend 30 minutes reorganizing someone's session or 20 minutes, 15, whatever. I shouldn't have to spend that time reorganizing. If you keep everything organized, if you know how to use Pro Tools and know how to use Pro Tools in a way that it's going to make sense to someone else, like there's pretty standard things such as like you group your tracks and your video is, you have a video track or you know what I mean, just like auxes and stuff. Like there's certain things that people are going to look for when they're opening a session. And even with music, I mean, I would have clients where I would do a lot of work on their track, and then for whatever reason they wanted a different engineer, they wanted a different studio, or maybe they're out of town, they want to record at another studio. They would want those sessions. So those sessions, I had to have them set up in a way that even if they go to another recording studio and work with another engineer, whoever opens that session isn't going to be like scratching their head for 20, 30 minutes trying to just figure out what they're even looking at, and yeah, it's really just, and I guess that's not even like Pro Tools. Like obviously you need to know Pro Tools, but you need to know how to work efficiently and work in a way that you can collaborate. Even if you do freelance stuff, like you're not going to be doing everything on your own. There's going to be at some point in your career, you're going to interact with other people regarding files, regarding sessions, or any of that kind of stuff. And like, if you know how to use Pro Tools in a way that makes sense, like to other people, and what I mean by that is sessions that are set up properly, and like even just how to deliver files. Like if you're sending like a Pro Tools session, but you're not sending the audio files, like just kind of rookie mistakes and stuff like that. And I guess kind of connected to this whole thing is like computer literacy, but that's kind of like a given. I mean, pretty much everything in the world of creativity is done on a computer these days. You're not really going to need to know how to use a tape machine. You're going to encounter people. I mean, I work with some guys that are like in their 70s and they talk to me about tape machines. But those end up just being like stories from the past. I'm not like actually learning from them how to use a tape machine. And that's the other thing. I guess this kind of like a bonus point is be open-minded, and you're going to learn a lot on your journey. And I would try and recommend to work at a bunch of different places. Try freelance, try working in music, try working in film, and just see where your journey takes you. It's not really about becoming famous. It's not even really about making a lot of money. It's a work of passion. And if you don't have passion, you should not be doing this. So that's kind of the final note for today, is you have to love it. And if you love it, every day feels like a new journey, and you don't feel like it's a job that you hate. Obviously it's work, and sometimes we have to do things we don't want, but I would rather still have that be in audio than like, doing something that I really have no interest in. Because it's like, this past week I've been working on Ben 10, the show from like 2007, because of the writer's strike. They're trying to bring back all these catalog shows, and I've been editing it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of sick of watching Ben 10 over and over, but it's still fun because I'm using skills that I've learned in my professional career, not in college. Like when I was working as a recording engineer, oftentimes I would have to make radio edits and clean versions of tracks. And it turns out I'm using those skills now on film stuff and TV shows because we're having to conform. So we're having to take stuff from PAL to NTSC and different languages and stuff like that and conform it. But a lot of that is really similar to a radio edit and like a clean version of a song where you're cutting certain parts and moving over. And that's what I mean about like have fun along the journey. Like you're gonna learn stuff in audio engineering situations that you never know when you're going to need that knowledge. So just be a sponge and absorb everything you can. And, other than that, subscribe to my channel and comment on this video. And I'm really glad to be talking about this with you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day.